Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the C Morning Show. So we've got a couple of talk shows, and the first one, we're going to talk about grief.
Yep, and you do it with a smile, which is absolutely fine. No,
is that how we should deal with that?
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, I mean, it's like we should talk about grief openly and with a bit of joy. So that, well, I mean, in my opinion.
Because I'm under the assumption that I'm very bad at dealing with grief. I never know what it is. Like, what's the right thing to do? What's the right way? How should I be feeling? How should I be behaving? So it turns out as well that prolonged grief can actually even affect our mental health.
Absolutely. So that is why today we are going to get to know what is grief and how to overcome it with clinical psychologist at Personal Growth, Shierlen Octavia. Hello, Shierlen. Good morning.
Hi,
Morning. Welcome back.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yes.
So I know that the topic that we're going to talk about is grief. You know, when we hear the word grief, it's like, ooh, it's like heavy emotion, difficult emotion. But could you please explain what is grief?
Yeah, of course. So grief is an often strong or even overwhelming emotion as a natural response to loss. Although it is often associated with death, we actually do grieve in connection with a variety of losses.
Such as what?
Yeah, such as like losing things that we are attached to, or even status such as unemployment or being retired, or even the end of a relationship.
A breakup.
Yes, a breakup, and even losing like a cherished dream.
Right.
Yeah.
So that we can also grieve.
Yes.
When we lose. It's basically losing something that is so precious to you, whether it's something, a thing, or it's a person. Yes.
I would have assumed it would always have to be a person, like a loved one or a friend, something that's close to you. But
no,
yeah,
a job loss is also.
Right.
Yes. Yes. I've seen someone who's like that. Oh my goodness.
Okay. So we talk about grieving periods all the time. So what's a common grieving period that is still within something that's acceptable, something that is still somewhat like it's okay for you to go through that period? What would be a average time?
Okay, so grieving is actually highly unique and also personal experience. So there is no like set timeline of how we should end our grief.
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, typically people grieve for about 6 months through 2 years.
That's a lot.
Yes. Up to 2 years.
Up to 2 years.
They have to sit with that emotion. Yeah.
So there are people who can feel better in like a few weeks or months, but there are also some people who might take longer, even years. To
What
get over.
differentiated between those two people? What differentiate how someone can process something quicker or longer?
Okay, so there are actually some factors that can increase the risk of having longer period of grief, such as whether the death is unexpected or traumatic.
Or the loss is unexpected or traumatic?
Yes, the loss, traumatic. And then losing something that is unexpected, such as the death of a child, because it is more common for parents to pass away first.
You should never outlive your children.
Yeah.
That's the line.
Yes, and then it is also related to personality.
Interesting.
Yes, so people who are like more mellow, in nature, they actually can have more difficulties to deal with such emotion.
Grief. That would make sense, doesn't it? Okay, so let's talk about stages of grief. Like we talk about stages all the time. Like for example, I've heard that in the beginning, when something difficult happens, denial is usually a first stage that people go through. Anger, denial, right. So what are the stages of grief that you have to go through before you finally can come to the end of the journey?
Okay, so there are actually some theories about grief, but the most popular one was introduced by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross.
Yes.
Yeah, so there are 5 stages. The first one is like denial, anger, and then bargaining, depression, and then the last one is acceptance.
Bargaining, is that?
Bargaining,
What is that? Is that like kind of like...
It's like creating your own narrative? Like for example, you just broke up with someone and it was such a painful breakup and suddenly you're like, maybe it was for the best. Yeah, he was not that good anyway.
right,
It was not that great. There were just so many things that I actually didn't like about him.
weighing the two
Yes,
different
yes,
sides.
precisely.
It's bargaining with yourself.
Even bargaining with God.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. In what way? I mean, that's interesting.
Oh, like for example, like if you let me get through this, then I'll, and then you offer something in return, kind of like
Yes,
that?
yes.
Ah, okay.
Exchange something in return.
Right.
Okay. Wow, that is so interesting. So, how do we know that we're grieving? What are the symptoms usually? Crying, that's for sure, right?
Yeah, but there are also some people that are not crying.
Okay.
And
So they
it's actually-
suppress it.
Not really, because it can also be a normal response actually, not crying.
I
Yeah.
have a follow-up question to this. by the way.
Okay, okay.
Because maybe I can reflect on a personal experience. My
Yeah.
dad passed away years ago.
Yeah.
And when that happened, I actually didn't cry. In fact, throughout the entire thing. And I remember feeling sad because I was quite young at the time. I remember feeling sad. And I remember it was only months later because the funeral took place in China and I had actually went back to Toronto. I was already back at work.
Right.
And it was one day, one evening where some tears came out. I'm not a crier, by the way.
Right.
I
Yes.
very seldom cry throughout my
I
life.
know that. Yes, I can vouch for that.
But when it did happen, it wasn't at a time when I was like really thinking about it or
How many
or
days
a
after
trigger.
did it?
I would say a couple, at least 2 months after. And I was just sitting in my living room. And then it wasn't a particularly sad moment or there wasn't any particular trigger, but I remember it happened. And I was with a friend at the time who just kind of consoled me and thought, maybe you're just feeling it now. I want to ask, is that delayed onset grief? Like, is that grief that happened later? Or am I the type of person that just doesn't grieve? Is there such a thing? Because I started to believe because of that incident that maybe I'm just not a griever. Because I've had friends that passed away since throughout COVID. I've lost some friends and I was sad, but I never went through like a grieving period where I was like, I thought about all the stuff we went through. I did, but it wasn't in the, like you said, it's kind of weird, but I didn't smile through it, but I also wasn't crying through it. So is there such a thing as somebody like who doesn't actually go through a grieving process or a delayed grieving?
Yeah. Actually, there's also a delayed onset of grieving.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's also pretty common.
Why is that? Is that because of the lack of acceptance?
No, not really, because people can also grieve without having to go through the stages of grief. And they can also resolve their own grief.
So you jump immediately. You didn't
I skip all the steps.
Good for you, mate.
I don't know. I didn't even realize.
Seriously.
Oh, really?
I guess that's a good thing, huh?
But I am still grieving. It's just in my own way.
Yes, it is. So there's no like such norms or rules.
There's no right or wrong, I
Yeah,
guess.
no right or wrong when it comes to grief.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I felt it was wrong. I felt like,
Oh.
am I some kind of a bad person because I don't feel like I'm not crying at funerals like everyone else? And you feel bad, like you feel badly to yourself. Like I wonder if am I too cold? Am I not, am I not in touch with my emotions? You have these thoughts because
Of course.
the grieving process.
I can empathize how you would think that way, but I think each person is just different in processing everything, grief or any kinds of emotions.
Right.
So, with grieving, we can categorize it as negative feelings. And by negative feelings, I mean, according to Arthur Brooks, which is a professor in Harvard, a happiness professor in Harvard, there's nothing wrong with negative feelings. Negative feelings is actually a good thing because it can be a ground for us to grow if we know how to process negative feelings. And grieving is also a negative feeling. It's a very uncomfortable feeling, and our tendency as human beings usually, when we feel uncomfortable, we run away from it.
Yeah.
How do we process grief in a healthy way?
Okay. So, of course, the first one is to acknowledge the pain.
Okay,
Yeah.
acknowledge the pain. Such
Yes.
as, give us an example. Like somebody just broke up with somebody. It's like, how do we acknowledge that pain?
Yeah. The first and utmost important thing is to understand the process, the stages of grief, of course. And like we have to normalize that, negative feelings also try to tell us some information about ourselves, and it is not something to be avoid.
Or to be afraid of.
Yes, and to be afraid of. It is actually healthier for us to like embrace the feeling. So whenever we feel sad, instead of trying to like doing something that can lift up our mood, we can just let ourselves to be sad. Yeah,
Just allow it.
allow it.
Okay.
Yes, because as much love that as we receive like from the deceased person, from our loved ones, yeah, it is very natural for us to feel as much pain.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
As we lose them.
That's the bitter and the sweet, isn't it? The more you
Yeah.
love somebody, the more you're gonna hurt when they're
Yeah.
gone.
Of course, that's the thing about life, right? So after you acknowledge it, how long should you sit with it?
Well, grieving never truly stops because our lives are like forever changed when we lose the person we
Because
love.
we never stop loving the person that we
Yeah.
love as well.
Yes, but we can plan ahead, like for the grief triggers.
Oh.
Yeah, for example, like anniversaries, birthdays, or other important milestones that we share with the person. Yeah.
How should we face that? I mean, for example, oh, this is the birthday of my loved one who is no longer there. It's like, should we just try to forget about
celebrate it?
Yeah. It's like, how should we process
It can be anything actually.
Yeah.
Like it is also okay, totally okay to cry. And it's also totally okay to be like happy, to laugh with other people. So we just have to know, we just have to know like our pattern.
I know somebody who celebrates their dead pet's birthday every year.
Oh.
They're like, oh, they would have been so and so age. Just and it is a happy kind of moment because they post it. And I know it's a soft spot for you.
It's a soft spot for me. I'm beginning to like, okay. But again, like what Shierlen said, just that it really depends on the personality or the person, because that friend of yours, oh my God, if I did what she or he
You'd be breaking
did,
down.
oh, every year, I just can't.
Okay. So we've got people around us, let's say, that are grieving. Is there anything that we can do to help them through the process?
Yeah, I know that grieving can be such confusing and even frightening emotion for many people, especially those who haven't faced such losses in their life.
Okay.
So it can be pretty like fear of
Fear of the unknown, I would say, right? You don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. We feel unsure about how to console the others, but
Awkward.
yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I think the most helpful one is just simply to listen.
To listen.
Yeah, and also avoid saying something like "you'll be fine,
It's gonna
everything
be
is
okay."
going to be all right," because
heard that.
because they aren't.
Yeah. Usually
It's
people
not
just
okay.
get annoyed.
Yeah.
It's like, can I just have time and space
Yeah.
to just feel what I need to feel?
Yeah.
Like if we want to say something, like it is better to say like "I know how much you love them." Yeah, and then sharing like positive memories about their loved ones. Yeah.
So not to avoid it, right? Like like you actually go face to face with it.
Yes, and the other one is to like over practical help.
Like sending food.
Yeah, sending food.
Oh.
Oftentimes when they're grieving, they don't remember to eat.
Yeah.
Because they're so like cooped up in their minds. And so yeah, sending food is good. And then what else?
And then just make a quick call asking them about whether they do proper self-care. Yeah. Having like eating regularly, having enough sleep, even if it's hard.
Yeah.
Okay, like basically just human contact sometimes, right? Because when somebody's grieving, some people tend to just kind of like just isolate themselves and I don't really want to face the world right now, and that can be a dangerous thing, especially for mental health. We've seen that in COVID days as well.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe for like the first few days or a couple of days, but when it's prolonged, that isolation can be, it can be detrimental in a way.
I'm glad you brought it up. Let's talk about prolonged grief. Like, what's the best way to deal with somebody who's dealing with prolonged grief, or even yourself?
You know, like that character in Inside Out, the Pixar movie?
Yeah.
There's sadness.
There's the blue one.
The blue one.
Always so sad. All the
We
time.
don't want to be sadness for too long. We want to be joy sometimes as well.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we can support like people that we care of with like the previous one we have discussed, yeah, such as sending food and then asking them about their day.
Yeah.
But if it's, but it is not like our responsibility to make, to make them feel happy because, they also need time since, grieving also takes longer, even years. So whenever we think or like our loved ones think or feel that it is too much for them to process their grief, they can also like seek out treatment, psychotherapy, because it can help a lot to adapt with the loss.
Yes,
and also teach them ways to cope for their grief.
Yes, yes.
And they can also like remembering their loved ones by using writing journal, journaling, keeping a memo or diaries about the memories, or making scrapbook.
That can help them process, actually. I can imagine making scrapbook because it's facing the loved one that you've lost, but also at the same time, I mean, I imagine that you will cry, you will smile and laugh when you see all the photos, all the writings, but it does help to process it all.
And perhaps like if somebody's experienced extended prolonged grief, could coming and seeing someone like you help as well, right? Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. I'm pro going to a therapy.
Absolutely.
I have my own therapist. So if you feel a little bit wobbly, guys, get a therapist.
Thank you so much for coming by and chatting about this. I don't think we talk about this enough because you know the only way you kind of like come face to face with grief is somebody or yourself is grieving. And that's not really a great time to talk about grief anyway, right? So I'm glad we're having this opportunity to discuss it even further. Always glad to have you on the program.
Thank you, Shierlen. So we are now going to take a break. When we come back, we'll bring you updates from around the world when we return.